You know that feeling, right? When you're in the middle of something, maybe you're playing a sport or just driving a familiar road, and you suddenly realize your body is just doing its thing. It knew exactly what to do way before your brain even had a chance to catch up and think about it. Well, that feeling, it actually taps into a massive philosophical question that people have been wrestling with for thousands of years.
So, what is it? Do we have to have a plan, a theory, a thought before we can do anything? Or is it the other way around? Do our actions, our direct interactions with the world, actually shape our thoughts from the very beginning? It seems simple enough, but believe me, the answers to this question have shaped the entire course of Western philosophy.
Okay, so let's start with the modern answer, the one that probably feels the most intuitive to us. It comes from a way of thinking that puts our real lived experience right at the center of everything. The argument is, before we ever have a theory about the world, we're already in the world, acting and reacting.
And this philosophy has a name, phenomenology. The big idea here is that we're not just these detached minds floating around thinking about stuff. No, our primary way of being is as a body that's totally engaged with the world around us. Our physical, sensory experience isn't just some data our brain processes, it's the actual source of all meaning. I mean, just think about a great jazz pianist improvising. They're not sitting there consciously thinking, okay, now I will play a C minor seventh chord. Their hands just know where to go. Or an athlete making an incredible catch. They don't calculate the trajectory, their body just responds. It's a perfect example of action coming way before conscious theoretical thought.
So for phenomenology, your body isn't just a tool, like a puppet that your brain controls. It's the primary subject. It's the thing that's actually out there experiencing and learning. And through doing things over and over, it builds up what philosophers call tacit knowledge. This is a deep, practical kind of knowing that you can't really put into words, and it's seen as way more fundamental than any theory you could ever write down.
This all sounds pretty solid, doesn't it? I mean, it feels true to our experience. But what if I told you that there was an ancient group of philosophers who would say this entire way of thinking is a huge, catastrophic mistake? That it's all built on a complete illusion?
Yeah, this is the radical challenge. What if the very things we take for granted, movement, change, everything we see and hear and feel, aren't the foundation of reality at all, but are actually just a grand deception? What if our senses are fundamentally lying to us all the time? Well, welcome to the world of the Eleatics. Way back in the 5th century BCE, a thinker named Parmenides and his crew came up with one of the most mind-bending ideas in history. They argued that true reality is a single, perfect, unchanging, eternal thing, and all that motion and change we see around us, just a trick of the senses. And right here, you can see the two worldviews just collide. On one side, you've got phenomenology, saying our sensory actions are the source of all meaning. And on the other, you have the Eleatics who say, nope, pure reason, or logos, is the only way to the truth. For them, our sensory experience is a totally deceptive path that leads to false opinions, something they called doxa. Now, you're probably thinking, how on earth could anyone possibly defend that idea? How can you argue motion isn't real when I can literally just walk across the room? Well, to do it, the Eleatics had to invent something completely new, a powerful weapon for the mind, a tool that would become the foundation for all of Western thought, formal logic. And when you trace the history, it's pretty wild. Parmenides and his student Zeno didn't invent logic just for fun as some abstract exercise. It was a defense mechanism designed specifically to prove their worldview was right. And it was so powerful that Socrates and Plato picked it up and ran with it, creating the very foundation that modern philosophers are now pushing back against. So their whole argument really boils down to a few key concepts. The first one is doxa. For the Eleatics, doxa is basically everything that comes to you through your senses. It's the common sense world of movement and change and different things. And in their view, it's all just one big fat illusion. So if doxa is the enemy, what's the hero? Well, for them, it was logos, pure reason, pure argument. This is the only tool they believed could cut through the fog and deception of doxa. It doesn't rely on sight or sound or touch, only on what must be true based on strict logical deduction. And the specific weapon they used to wield logos was called dialectic. It was invented by Zeno, and he used it to create his famous paradoxes. You've probably heard of Achilles and the tortoise. These were brilliant arguments designed to show that our everyday idea of motion is actually filled with logical contradictions, and if it's contradictory, it can't possibly be real.
So, what's the big takeaway from this ancient showdown? The source material we're looking at here makes a really powerful claim that by forgetting about the Iliadics, we've kind of forgotten what reasoning was for in the first place. This right here is the core idea, and it's pretty radical. The claim is that a lot of what we call reasoning today is really just forming opinions. But true reasoning, in its original form, was something way more intense, something tied to a very specific and very demanding worldview. What this is really saying is that logos wasn't invented to help you win a debate or just come up with clever new ideas. It was created for one purpose: to connect our thinking to something permanent, something universally true, a stable ground that exists completely beyond our shifting, unreliable senses. And they had a clear three-step method to get there. First, you have to start with one non-negotiable assumption, that a single, unchanging reality, which they called being, exists. Second, you use pure reason, logos, to figure out what must logically follow from that. And third, and this is the killer, you must reject any and all sensory experiences that contradict your logic, no matter how real they feel. Now, why would anyone go through all this trouble? The whole point was to find a common ground. Not like a compromise, but a capital T truth. A truth that's true for everyone, everywhere, for all time. Something that's absolutely necessary, universal, and totally free from the messy, subjective contamination of personal opinion, of doxa. And this ultimate common ground, this bedrock of reality, has a name: being. And the argument here is that any real, true philosophical journey doesn't just choose to believe in this. It has to assume it. The idea is that we are fated to it, that our reality and even our ability to think straight are completely bound to this single, unmoving foundation. So that's the massive question we're left with. Is our embodied, active, ever-changing world the real source of knowledge? Or were Parmenides and the Eleatics right all along? Is every genuine search for truth, whether it's in science or morality or philosophy, is it all at its core just a journey back to find that one single, unchanging idea from which everything else finally makes sense?